Hello YouTube, this is Brian Eslick here from howtoautomotive.com. Today I'm going to show you how to do a starter on a 2006 Honda Accord with a 2.4 liter engine. The first step we need to do is find the radio code in the glove box and keep it. We're going to disconnect the battery, and that erases the memory for the radio, and it will not work when you put the battery, plug the battery back in to try to start the car. The radio goes into anti-theft mode and you need a code to get it to work again. With that being said, the next step is to remove the negative battery cable. Now that the cable is disconnected, we'll proceed to do the starter. And they stuffed that bad boy underneath the intake manifold. So we're going to take this intake manifold here off to get to the start. We'll start by removing the engine covers and the air intake boot. And after that, I'm going to remove the throttle body. So you will need a gasket for the throttle body to do this job. And you'll need new gaskets for the intake manifold too. So I took off the throttle body boot. It was only held on with a couple clamps that I used a Phillips screwdriver to remove it with. And I just left as much of it hooked up as I could and flipped it out of the way. Now I'm going to remove the throttle body. So I'm going to disconnect the 4 bolts here. I'm going to remove the 4 bolts here and once again I'm going to try to leave everything plugged in. I'm also going to remove the 10mm bolt on the side of the throttle body and the 10mm bolt holding the wiring harness down. Now that I got all the bolts removed, I pulled the throttle body off and I just pulled it aside, left everything hooked up to it, and just zip tied it out of the way. The next step is to remove the electrical connector at the map sensor and to disconnect the vacuum hoses here and here. Once the vacuum lines have been removed and the map sensor unplugged, the next step is to just take this little 10mm bolt that holds this bracket on, that holds the wiring harness and the way it routes through the vacuum hose mount there. Take that off. Okay, the next step is to remove the support bracket that's underneath the intake, and my flashlight's kind of highlighting it. It's a 12mm bolt, and there's a black bracket that goes up to the top of the intake there, so you can see it down there. So you're going to remove that bolt, and after that then you'll remove the bolts that hold the front of the intake on. Remove those. You'll also have to remove this electrical connector here that mounts to a bracket underneath the intake. So just pop that off its perch by pushing the tab right here on the back, and it'll slide off its perch. And then after that, the intake will come out. So now that I got the intake out of the car, this is the bracket I'm referring to, and then the wiring was connected here. Alright, after getting the intake manifold off, the next step is to remove the wiring to the starter here and here. To get the wiring unplugged, you have to peel the rubber boot back. And I have a really shallow ratchet to get to the bolt. And you'll also need to remove the wiring, the little clip here that holds the wiring to the nose of the starter. Now if you can't get your tool in there, what you'll have to do is you'll have to remove the main bolts for the starter here and here and pull it out to get access to it, because this pipe to the thermostat housing will be in your way. So, but I have a really shallow ratchet that allows me to get that out. To get that clip off on the nose of the starter, you just use some needle nose pliers and squeeze the tabs and push. Also, there's a tab right here underneath the harness. If you pop that off, this whole harness will come out of your way, and then you have access to your bolt here and your bolt here. And that's all it's holding. The thing you want to be careful about is the knock sensor is right here, so when you pull the starter out, it's easy to hit it. So just be careful pulling it out. Do it slowly and then angle it out, and the starter will come out. And you can see I got it out. Okay, after verifying that the new starter is the correct part, it's time to go back together. Start by nosing it back in nose first, and then putting the bolts in and torquing them down. Alright, the new starter's back in. Now it's time to reattach the electrical connectors. Okay, so I got the wiring hooked back up and reconnect it here and back in the nose cone. So one important note is if you don't disconnect that negative battery cable, you will arc out right here and it will be a pretty good spark. So definitely make sure you disconnect that negative battery cable. Next step is to put new gaskets on and put the intake manifold back on, or the plenum, however you want to call it. So now that I put a new gasket on and slip the intake back on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start all the bolts and leave them loose until all of them are all started, and then I'll torque them down, including the bolt on the bottom of the bracket. Tip for you: when you're starting the bolt on the bottom, if you put a little piece of paper inside the socket and then stuff the bolt in there, it'll hold it in place so it won't fall off when you try to mount it below. So because the way to do it is I have to go under the hose like this to start the bracket. If you look under the radiator hose, you can see the extension of the socket and starting. Okay, after torquing the manifold down, it's time to reinstall the vacuum lines and electrical fittings that we took off on the intake. Okay, after hooking up the electrical connectors and the vacuum lines that we took off, it's time to put a new throttle body gasket on the throttle body and remount the throttle body. Okay, after reinstalling the throttle body and making sure that you put any brackets that may have held the wiring harness on back on, there's one here and one here that I took off. After those are secured, the next step would be to put the air cleaner back on, the air boot back on. Okay, now that I got the air boot back on, the next step would be to put the engine cover back on and bolt it down. And after that, we're going to start the car and check it for vacuum leaks. Okay, the car starts successfully and there's no vacuum leaks. And I'd like to take this time to thank you for watching the video and hopefully it helped you out. And if you like what you see, please hit subscribe and maybe I can help you out some more. Thank you.